wāwahi, te tuāpapa e ahi ana tātou te tutuki pai ai ngā mahi kei mui a tātou. Aha koa te tohu iti, ka whai kaha tonu tātou ki te taki karakia. Reira whai mai i au. So I guess we're a little bit thin on the ground, and until that happens, I guess we have to ask that everybody still continue to give our karakia a bit of volume, a bit more gusto this morning to help alter our pathway as we begin our hui this morning. So, hui anō, ka kaha mai tātou, I'll set that pace, and will give us some volume and some gusto.
Takata hau ki te uru, whakatangata hau ki te tōna, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hia ki ana te ata kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora.
Kia ora Thompson. Kia ora tātou. I've got some housekeeping to read out first. Aroha mai, bear with me. This meeting has been live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In the event of an earthquake, drop, cover and hold. If the shaking is long or strong, when shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed immediately towards Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. In the event of evacuation, if an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area on the grass at the corner of Dalton and Voltaire Streets. Emergency exits are clearly signposted. Wharepaku are located down the hall to the right out of the chamber entrance. Our next agenda item is conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts in any of today's agenda items? There are none. Kia ora. Confirmation of the last minute meeting minutes of the RPC on the 13th of March. Okay, a copy has been circulated and they're taken as read and confirmed. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Williams. And as the mover and a seconder, someone who was there at that hui.
I think I'll then.
Kia ora. Tanya, all those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Kia ora. We did have decision items next, but until we have a couple of members join us, we will move to the information items, please. Start the tank update. Thank you. So we'll move to item 6. Kia ora. So, Katrina, can I hand that over to you and the team?
Okay. I'm inviting Nicola up.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Nicola.
So actually one of our planners was supposed to be presenting this item today, Sarah Winans, but she's away sick, so I will fill in for her. Oh, excuse me.
There's a lot of that going around at the moment.
Yeah. So basically it was just a brief update on where we are in the tank process. We have been underway with mediation since December last year. There were, let me find the right paper now that we're out of order and I can tell you exactly the right numbers. A significant number of appeal points on it, and so the court requested that we go to Environment Court mediation prior to going to court. So the first just a little typo that Di spotted is that in that paragraph 3 of that paper it says that mediation is anticipated to conclude by February 24. That should be 25, of course. No, mediation will be, yeah, February 25. So we're working our way through that. Mediation is obviously without prejudice, so there's a limited scope of what we're able to share with you today. But one of the major updates that I think was the point of coming to the committee today was to let you know that we have had an additional 2 days with a third day backup scheduled for a conversation around allocation methods. So the parties have been invited to bring alternative allocation methods forward on the 19th and 20th of November this year. That's pretty much the updates from us in terms of policy. I'm not sure if there's anything else to add to that or if there's any questions.
Any questions for Nicola or the team?
Doesn't have to be.
No? Quite self-explanatory.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you for the update.
Easy. Did you want to go to,
Chair, we'll move to the statutory advocacy report.
Yes, let's go through, that's, what item is that? That moves
10.
over to 10. Yep, thank you, Nicola.
so we've got a statutory advocacy update. This is the standing update that we normally bring to you, but you might notice that it's got a little bit of a different look this time. It's been refreshed to hopefully make it easier to read and understand what's going on with those. Any feedback on that's more than welcome, and if there's any questions about any of those specific updates, we're more than happy to answer them.
Nicola, just a question on the work that the team's doing there. I mean, where is the greatest emphasis of the team's time in terms of Plan Change 7, Plan Change 9, all of those statutory pieces of work we're involved in? Where do we see our team spending most of their time?
Yeah, absolutely. So Plan Change 7 outstanding water bodies has concluded in court, so we're just waiting for a decision from that. So that's largely concluded in terms of the amount of work that we're having to do. Tank, obviously, that's quite heavy at the moment because we're still in mediation, and that's also not just involving the policy team, but also keeping the consents team and the science team quite busy as well. So that is quite an intense period of work at the moment that will continue through till we get to court, but there's a kind of a time frame associated around that. Obviously, the government is keeping us busy with the significant number of reforms around the RM system, national policy statements, new ones, and things like that. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we just keep abreast of. And then we've got Kotahi in the mix with that as well. So, yeah, lots going on in that space.
Yeah. Any further questions for Nicola? Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah. We seem to be in this sort of serial reform, I don't know, almost sort of stuck in a vortex of a kind, and we have been for several years. The NPSFM going off this way and now it's heading off that way, and we've got 7 new NPSs, or amended NPSs coming. We've got changes to legislation, including with respect to Te Mana o Wai. And I'm not saying stop anything that's in the other papers, but really, if you've got that much national direction changing, how far can you go in drafting an RPS around all of those chapters when, you know, you're going to get midstream, or we're going to, you know, and sort of,
Yeah,
it's
no.
a real conundrum, isn't it?
Fair question. So I've kind of got 2 responses to that. The first would be if we stopped and waited for central government, we'd never do anything because there's always a change. And the second point and that was one of the things that we brought to you around doing the RPS. So in isolation, or to bring that part of the program forward, was that the real heavy lifting that the RPS does is to identify those key environmental issues in our region. Now, regardless of what planning framework we are in or how that is expressed, we need to know what's happening in our own backyards. So to identify those issues, to work with our scientists, to work with our communities, to work with tangata whenua stakeholders to identify those issues, we're going to need to know that whatever flavour of planning system we're in. So I have a level of comfort about that while also understanding, yeah, there's a lot of change afoot and we do need to be nimble and agile with that. What we have kind of seen coming from central government, I don't think challenges that in terms of identifying those issues.
And before we, and so as we develop the RPS, there'll always be stops and pauses along the way to check in, see where we're at, and compare that with where central government is at. The current timeline has us bringing a draft RPS, we're getting into our other papers, but a draft RPS for notification midway through next year. Remember, that is only setting direction for the region. It's not going into objectives, policies or rules, which is the substantive part of kotahi. And by then, we're expecting central government direction to have landed with us by then.
Yeah, look, I appreciate the carrying on with the work that's going on in all the other papers in terms of identifying values and thinking about outcomes for those values and the vision, the long-term vision around land and water. But an RPS has objectives and policies.
Yes.
And it has to give effect to an NPS. And they're changing everything from the NPS-FM to the NPS-IB to the NZCPS. There's going to be new infrastructure. There's going to be a new direction on natural hazards. There's going to be a new direction on renewable energy. What isn't there going to be new direction on? And I understand we're always in a state of flux. I'm just sort of thinking about using the resources of this organisation and the PSG organisations sensibly. So I haven't got an answer here. I'm just raising the question: how far do we go? Given that a lot of the stuff's actually going to end up being written for us.
So through you, Chair, on each of those subject areas you've just mentioned, we have key staff either involved in working groups on central government working groups or through the, so we are well connected into central government reform on each of those things.
So you can be aligned in what you're thinking of.
Absolutely. So we are hearing what MFE are drafting or thinking or talking about. So we're not going to get out of step.
Nick?
Thanks very much.
I think just to add to that corridor that was going on, I think one of the most critical things this committee can think about and do in terms of the regional policy statement is that work around natural hazards. So coming out of the flood reviews, coming out of all the experiences that whānau, Apu, Marae and the wider community have had over the last 18 months, we want to be as directive as we can about not building in places that are dangerous. So whilst the government reform agenda goes on, I would encourage the committee to have at the top of its mind our ability to avoid planning and putting people back into harm's way. And so I think there's a real imperative on us collectively to produce a regional policy statement that provides direction to the district councils to avoid that very issue that we've all suffered from in the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Nicola, a question around the future development strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just provide a bit of an update on where that is and how that ties into our RPS?
I might ask Gav up to speak to this one
Thanks,
as he's
Gavin.
been involved
Kia ora.
in that project.
So I know there's been conversations at that table, but essentially how does that influence our organisation's work? And when will we see that come to light through the RPS? Kia ora, Gavin.
Not in a koutou, just. So two things. First, I've spotted that the update in whatever item it is, the policy projects update around the FDS is somewhat out of date. Apologies for that. So I'll perhaps start there with just a really light touch. The future development strategy is a focused project for the Napier Hastings urban area. The National Policy Statement for Urban Development requires the three councils to partner up and develop a future development strategy, looking at development in that urban area for the next 30-year planning horizon.
And mana whenua.
A joint committee has been formed featuring representatives from those three committees and the three post-settlement treaty entities. So that's Mangahuru Tangatu Trust, Tamatea Poka Whenua, and Mana Ahuriri Trust. That joint committee has been formed for the last 18 months or so and supported by a technical advisory group. That joint committee has been overseeing the development of a draft future development strategy that looks at not only residential housing needs in that urban area, but also commercial business land needs as well. We got to a point where a draft future development strategy was on the agenda for one of the joint committee meetings in July. I can't remember the exact date, but due to a technical difficulty with some of the documents being unable to be accessed online, that meeting was adjourned. We have been unable to reconvene that meeting for the time being, just with trying to reorganise dates and meeting calendars and whatnot. So that committee meeting still remains adjourned for now. How that then also, so the future development strategy would be something that when the joint committee agrees, goes out for public consultation, public submissions. If and when that future development strategy is finalised sometime next year, we would certainly expect that future development strategy to pave the way for whatever elements need to be featured into our regional policy statement at around about that time. But bearing in mind, that's only a future development strategy for the Napier and Hastings urban area, not other parts of the region.
Thank you, Gavin. Any further questions for item 10, or we can move into item 9 as well? Is that you, Nicola?
Item 9.
Which is the policy projects update.
Yes, yep, we can move into that one. That was the one that Gav just mentioned. Apologies, it appears to have the old
Future
yeah,
development strategy. Yeah, that's fine.
updated. I'll just take that one as read, and if there's any questions. There's been a brief update on tanks, so I don't think I need to speak to that.
No. Any questions from item 9? There are.
8, move to 8.
Yeah, let's move to the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review Policy Recommendations. Thank you.
Can I try and join Corona by phone?
Yeah, we'll just have one member join by phone, if that's okay.
Because
Yeah.
they can't get their internet working up at Te Haroto at the moment.
Kia ora, Louise.
Hello.
Kia ora.
So this paper is really to bring to this committee the recommendations from the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review that have particular focus on the regional policy statement and the recommendations within the review to proceed with the regional policy statement as soon as possible, really.
Yeah. So there's those key focus areas which fall under paragraph 5 there, and then the discussion which follows through. So there was 5 key points that came out. The first, under number 22, was that we should urgently review the regional policy statement. So it includes those clear objectives and policies around land use management and flood hazard areas that Nick just referred to. So that was that urgent work that we need to keep progressing under the RPS. We've already started on that work, and that's already underway. The next recommendation, which is number 24, was a list of items that should be included in the regional policy statement. Now, those were accepted, and that will be work that is undertaken through Kotahi. And then moving on to number 25, that one refers to that intensified residential development and subdivision, making sure that that's prohibited in relation to unacceptable flood hazards. Now, we don't have that definition, unacceptable flood hazards, yet in our RPS, so that would be something that we would need to define or wait and see if there is direction through the new NPSFM that is being that has been proposed. Number 26 was looking at the Kapiti Coast District Council and looking at that as best practice. So that is a piece of work for my team and to dovetail into other teams and to do that review and understand how that approach would work for residual risk in the Hawke's Bay. And number 27 relates to the design of new structures, particularly around bridges to prevent or minimise those debris barriers that can be created during floods. So that would be something that would happen in the plan part of Kotahi. So as we work through that, we would be looking to do that so that that would be included in the infrastructure chapter and as well through any kind of consenting processes when they come through. So I think that covers off the 5 points that spoke to the planning part of the review, and largely we're probably underway with a lot of that work already, and there's just a few specific things to make sure that we capture in there.
Kia ora, thank you, Nicola. Jock?
Thanks, Nicola. Recommendation 27, that relates to bridges. So I just wanted to ensure that when new bridges are being built now, that this is telling them what they need to do in future, so that that's happening. It's not.
Through you, Chair, yes. When Hastings District Council, for example, when they have new bridges to build post-cyclone, they're working very closely with both our asset management team and our consenting team on what the requirements for those bridges would be. So while we haven't put that into a planning document yet, those conversations are definitely taking place.
Okay, so they're so when they're building a bridge, they're doing everything they can to ensure that these sorts of things are incorporated in that design.
Yep.
Through you, Chair, I'd suggest that the biggest challenge is probably less the local infrastructure that the territorial authorities are building. The biggest challenge is the national infrastructure that the likes of Kiwi Rail and Waka Kotahi put in place to make sure that those really big bridges, and we only have to go to the mouths of our nearest Awa, near Awatoto there, to look at the impact of having those big infrastructure bridges not constructed in a way that allows flood passage. So as those temporary structures are replaced, I think critical that the regional policy statement that this committee oversees is very directive of what is needed, because we have less kind of day-to-day influence. So you need your plan to be very robust.
Yes, just one further comment, Chair. So we definitely need to do that, and in particular the one just down the road here, the temporary one, we just need to ensure that that is in fact not a permanent one.
Through you, Chair, at the last Regional Transport Committee, that committee was informed that that in fact is going to be permanent.
It's going to be replaced with a permanent one just like it.
Correct.
That's what we were told, wasn't it?
The structures that they put in as a temporary fix are sufficient to be made permanent. And so currently there is...
We've got a problem there.
Yeah, we do. So the Regional Transport Committee has absolutely made that known to Transrail, and that's not a satisfactory solution. However, there's no regulatory requirement at this point in time that can direct them to do something else.
Can I ask a question then? Is there no consent requirement?
There are consent requirements ordinarily for putting structures into the bed of the river, but you will remember that those structures were put in on the back of cyclone response where consents were not required at the time, activities could be undertaken in accordance with an OIC and for them to be advised or to advise the regional council thereafter. So they might need consent potentially for the existing structures to remain there.
So they might need to have consent.
But there's limited regulatory triggers there for us.
So, sorry, so Chair, we've simply got to find a way around this because there's $1 billion of business associated very close to that structure. And, you know, that can't prevail, the current setup. So I don't know enough about the nuances of all this to know what the answer is, but we must find an answer to that.
Okay.
Agree, councillor. I guess the question is, how do and what do we do around our RPS to strengthen our case around building greater resilience into infrastructure such as what we're talking about?
Through you, Chair, we can absolutely do that through the RPS in terms of identifying that as hazards or setting direction, but that's still not going to take effect until the RPS is notified as a planning document, and then you give it some weight as it goes through the process. It's not going to help us today in terms of the bridges down the road, and certainly that's a conversation that the RTC is trying to have with Transrail and Waka Kotahi.
Addressing the regional policy statement as
Is possible?
quickly as
possible.
as this committee feels is possible, I think is a really critical element, because both that bridge but others around the region are going to need that level of intervention and that level of direction. So,
And if I might just add to that, we do have a chapter in the RPS that's directed, which is energy, infrastructure and transport. And one of the issues that we've identified in that chapter already is the resilience of infrastructure generally, but also in the face of a changing climate and natural hazards. So that's absolutely on our radar, but it will just be how quickly we can get the RPS to move.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reflect on that and then a question. That bridge is going to have to be dealt with at political level in the meantime.
Yeah.
It's a funding issue essentially, and a commitment to invest. We would just say pause. If it's that good a replacement bridge, just don't spend the money until we've got this all sorted out and aligned with our flood protection scheme work that we're doing right now, including what's happening with Aotearoa. So that's that level. But I'm just interested in the timeline here, given the CEO's advice that we focus on the natural hazards. We've got a previous paper that we're coming back to around developing issues and options, and looking at initial policy developments for Kotahi. There's a graph in our papers that's a timeline that's very difficult to see.
We asked for that to be sent out as an attachment separately.
Maybe it has been, I just haven't checked back in. But,
Yeah, it has been.
great. I guess my question is,
You're going to have to ring Tanya back, Dave.
how do we integrate the suggestion, or does the suggestion of issues and options for the flood protection, also for the review panel's recommendations to come back to us in early 2025, align with the timeline for initial policy direction on issues for other topics? Is that kind of lined up? Or?
Yeah, and so one of the questions in that paper is, were there any priority areas that you'd like to focus on? And so that's absolutely a live conversation.
Right.
But we will get to that item though. It's a decision one, and we're just waiting for a member to join.
Right, so that was just my issue, is ensuring the staging and sequencing relative to other topics works, reading the papers collectively. Because, I mean, that's going to inform, things like the expressway. There's additional bridges for the expressway coming along as well, that will need consents, that aren't emergency works, and there's what else going on as well. So, thank you.
Kia ora, Laura.
Kia ora, thank you for your paper. I just want to know what the methodology is for 24.
Oh, yeah.
You've got lots of defined and direct, but what's the methodology that's going to be defined?
Yeah.
So these are the recommendations that came through from the review.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Okay.
We will be working through the asset management team
Right.
to map these flood risks with, the experience of the cyclone, but also taking into consideration climate adaptation and change, and working with the community and our mana whenua and our partners to make sure that we have all that information relevant for these topics. There's a lot that's captured in there. We need to pick it apart and put it back together again.
I then wonder then, is the ECAN model a bit better given that they built whole suburbs on marshlands? I know. So they used maps from maybe 50 years ago. The mana whenua brought in their maps, and Ricky might be able to speak to this, which are more extensive. So we're talking about former wetlands.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about
Yeah.
that type of stuff as well, so that's why I'm asking what the methodology is, given that some of these reports are only based on 60-year flood events, and there are more historical flood events there. As the review said, the floodwaters go where the floodwaters go, and is it complementary with the previous stop banks or post-stop banks? What does that look like? I'll just put it there, and you'll get back to us.
That's right.
Can't lie.
There's a significant, as Louise said, there is a significant amount of work in just that one recommendation alone.
Yes.
And you can be sure that we are all going to be working on that together.
Ka whai, Katrina.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Tanya.
Just a question also related to the mapping of flood hazard risks. Is the LiDAR post-cyclone now available? Because in the past, we didn't have LiDAR for some areas.
Yep.
I'm thinking kind of North Tāngoi or North, there wasn't LiDAR, but I understand there may be now.
Yep, all online, right?
Yep, we can.
So there is LiDAR for all the areas we'd be looking at.
Yep, that's my understanding.
Can we have that shared to all the members?
Yeah,
the updated LiDAR data post-cyclone?
Awesome.
Ka pai. Kia ora. Dai. Kia ora.
Kia ora, everybody. Just Morena, Katrina and Nicola, just to take you back to the 25, item recommendation 25. You talked about having little powers, or what I heard, Katrina, is that we've got very little power or ability to influence those national infrastructure builds until our plan is notified. Is there a sense that they are willing to accommodate that desire and work with us, or is there a problem?
I don't think there's a sense that there is a problem and that they are unwilling to work with us. In fact, very keen to work. I think all of the partners are wanting to work with each other, particularly, as Nick said, in that local space, the TLA space, really working hand in glove there in terms of stock bank height versus bridge height. In terms of central government agencies, I think Martin articulated it best, that it really does come down to the government's desire for speed and the government's financial constraints combined. And so I think we will continue through the RTC, where we do have very good relationships, to lean heavily on those relationships. Certainly the mayors and the members of the RTC have not been shy in making their views known to central government agencies, and I understand are continuing to do so and will continue to do so. That's a woolly answer. I know that.
It was a little bit. So Katrina, is this, is your sense that central government, whether it be Waka Kotahi or Kiwi Rail, are they actually willing to listen to those mayors and local recommendations from the Regional Transport Committee? Martin, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, so far, Kiwi Rail, the answer's no, but I've heard nothing of NZTA or Waka Kotahi to say that they are not completely on board with the idea of ensuring flood resilience in new infrastructure as to the roading network. So we've got a much better, deeper, stronger, wider relationship through and through with Waka Kotahi. Kiwi Rail is a late entrant to our hui, and have pretty much just told us what they're going to do. That's why I think we've got a problem there, but not more broadly.
Can I add to that, Di? We've got a meeting this Friday, myself, the Mayors, Martin, with Simon Bridges, who's the CE of Waka Kotahi, the chair of Waka Kotahi. And so we'll be putting across the need for resilience building going forward. And I think, so that's the political voice that we can get across to them. I also want to jump to the influence of PSGEs and their role in any CIA work that they're doing for any transport upgrade or new works around what influence you may have through your CIA or cultural values assessment around resilience work. So I'm going to turn this from a comment to a question. Nicola, what may that look like for any of our hapu or PSGE who are doing CIAs or cultural value assessments? How can they incorporate resilience work being built into supporting the application?
I'm going to pass to Katrina because it's been a long time since I've done consents, and I wouldn't want to give any of them wrong advice.
I think the simple answer is essentially in terms of the cultural impact assessment that is being prepared, they just need to identify that in there, unless we're talking at specifics. I'm happy to sit with individuals as they prepare their CIAs and give some guidance. I think that's probably best on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. But we do need to be careful, particularly if we are the consenting authority, then we need to be independent. So perhaps through the tile staff, we could have a session on CIAs, maybe, or something along those lines. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, kia ora. Tanya?
Just a related question in terms of, this is one bridge that we have concerns about, but as a region, how is the transport weaknesses or rebuild being assessed, given that, as you were saying, the productivity is all dependent on having good access, and for those of us who are north of Napier, the fact that there's so little being invested in there's nothing being actually really invested in resilience other than looking at Waikari Bridge. But that whole state highway up there is just a patchwork of sticky plasters. But as a region, how are we approaching these big issues around transport and infrastructure with all our councils, not just ourselves? Is that part of the Transport Committee's work?
Yes, so through your chair, absolutely. The Regional Land Transport Committee prepares the Regional Land Transport Plan, identifies its priorities for the region. The number one priority for the region, Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, was the Waikato Gorge.
Number one project, yeah.
Number one project. And you'll see that the government's come through and identified that as being funded.
But you're not going to get to it when the devil's elbow's next blown out.
Well, we put up a $3 billion program for that corridor that was backed by NZTA, so that's still there.
Yeah, it is still in the plan.
Yeah, so we're right, resilience is the number one policy priority, and we've got a policy in there that says all new bridge infrastructure has to be aligned with natural hazard management. So it's now the time to build that into the RPS. I think that's what the discussion's about. Chair, I had another question
Yes.
on the residual risk issue. There's a question on that before, but I had a quick look in the panel's report where it referred to the Kapiti Coast District Council's approach as best practice. What is that?
I'm not across that.
We're about to find out.
Yeah, we can come back to you with that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so, but look, on that, and it's maybe a bit of a grenade, but there's a lot of raru in our communities at the moment around the implications of Category 3 land classification, particularly unintended consequences for insurance. And I think it applies as much within Māori communities as more broadly. Commercial activities, going well beyond the purpose of that being to trigger buyouts, right? And if you're in Category 3, you get a voluntary buyout. Where is the baton pass between the work we'd be doing to, say, prohibit subdivision or new housing in our RPS next year and that land classification at the moment? Is there a baton pass? Does one sort of run out and the other take up the job, or is that too hard a question to sort of put on anyone right now?
I think that's a fairly tough question through you, Chair, but the purpose of land categorisation is not to enable buyouts. The purpose of land categorisation was to identify locations where there was an unacceptable risk to life. So that is the premise for land categorisation. The critical elements that we have collectively discussed with the territorial authorities is that the mapping of the flood extent from the cyclone gets transferred into their district plans, and the regional policy statement deals with the fact that some parts of the region, and there's members of this committee who've experienced that firsthand, were and shouldn't be developed in the future. So that's the crux of that piece, but it's a work in progress.
So that data set that informed Category 3 could travel into the RPS as the groundwork for areas where things might be prohibited, or you do it again, or what? Because that's very controversial at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. My understanding in speaking with our modellers and this organisation is there would need to be further work on that in order for it to be part of the RPS.
Because it was done at real pace?
It was done at real pace.
Okay,
and it's got to have more added to it.
So it could be it could effectively supersede the purpose that the CEO just described of working out where we don't build.
I think I think it needs more added to it, is my understanding.
And just on that, if I may, my understanding of some of the work around Category 3 was it was focused on where this flooded.
Right.
And which is why I'm asking about the LIDAR and why it's a good recommendation to look at flood risk generally, because that was this flood. You may have a slightly different makeup and the flood will be different for the next one, but we should be able to understand what the probability of that is and give, because, people, it's a little bit like the tsunami lines in Wellington. It's like, this side you're back, you're all right, and that side you're gone on. It's the same Category 3 lines currently, in my understanding, is what was met based on that flood. We could have a different large flood, which would, bring up other flood patterns.
The other thing is that when we're looking at natural hazards, we need to consider all of the natural hazards, not just the flood, because you don't want to move somebody out of a flood-prone area into a tsunami, liquefaction, landslide. So it's a real holistic view that we'd need to take.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some great kōrero here, and I guess to underscore the importance of the RPS, could you, Nicola, just demonstrate how important that is and what it influences most for our TA partners in District Council, Napier City Council, Central Hawke's Bay and Wairau District?
Absolutely. So the way a regional policy statement is set up is that it actually sits not only above our regional resource management plan and our coastal plan, but it also sits above the other TA plans, so the other councils. So our regional policy statement has the ability to direct those councils to undertake certain activities, whether it's to include things in their plans, certain monitoring, thing like that. So it's a very powerful document, and it has that direct link into other plans. So yeah, if you're talking about natural hazards, there could be quite a strong link between those two plans. Yeah.
And specifically with land categorisation, because it's been brought up, our direction in the RPS around natural hazards identified, how does that help or hinder depending on the timing, most particularly Hastings District Council, and being able to change their district plan to reflect Category 3 areas?
So they could do it, so following our RPS, they could do a plan change to update their plan. So that would be, or they could actually do it beforehand,
Okay.
so
So they're not waiting for us?
no.
Okay.
And we're actually already in conversation with Hastings about the plan changes they are looking at doing.
And what about Napier?
Hastings District Council are the area that was most significantly affected by Cyclone Gabriel. It's just in terms of their plan change that they are looking at immediately about that. Napier are about to release, or they have released their draft district plan. They are currently working on their hazards section of that district plan and having conversations with our staff about that.
Just one last question with the RPS and how it relates to district plans. What is the expectation that they follow suit? And how long do they normally have to reflect it in their district plan?
So through you, Chair, there is no legislative requirement for time frame or mandate. We can direct through the RPS. If the TLA chose not to pick that up and change their district plan, then realistically, the only option that a regional council has to take that further is to submit on a district plan and make that submission to request that they do that, and then take that through the submission process.
Kia ora. Are there any further questions from the team on our information items? Oh, that was a good kōrero though, very topical. And helps us lead into the decision item. What we might do is break now until 1 o'clock. There'll be some lunch coming out soon, but by 1 o'clock we'll have a few members join, so we'll have quorum to make our decisions. If Corona, Jenny and Di, can you please come back at 1? We need you. Or just stay online and mute. Ka pai? Otherwise, we'll break for 35 minutes. Ka pai?
We could do item 7, anyway.
Oh, yeah, we could do.
What's item 7?
It's the PSG engagement.
No, we might start with that when we come back. Ka pai?
Yeah.
Okay, kia ora. Welcome back to our Regional Planning Committee hui. So if we can resume with item 7, the PSG engagement update. Kia ora.
Yeah, I'm going to invite Saul Gudsall and Bianca Burns up. They're going to speak to this paper with a bit of support. So I'll pass over to their capable hands. Where do you want to go?
Kia ora, Saul. Kia ora, Bianca.
Kia ora koutou. Ko te mata o Rongokako, te maunga, ko Ngaruroro te awa, no Heritonga hau ko Bianca Burns tōku ingoa. For those, I haven't presented to you guys before. So before we do present this paper, just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Bianca Burns. I've been a policy planner with HBRC for 2 years. Delighted by the earlier conversation as I am the policy planner responsible for energy infrastructure and transport. Prior to joining HBRC, I spent time in central government working with Ministry of Education and at the Māori Land Court, Te Kuti Whenua Māori as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Ko Saul Gudsall tōku ingoa. I have been here before, so kia ora anō.
We know you, Saul.
We're here today to speak to this paper. The PSG engagement update summarises contracts that have been agreed with PSGEs that sit on the RPC and has come from the visions and values work that is required under the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management 2020, so the NPSFM. The paper sort of summarises the work to date that the PSGs have undertaken in relation to their wai and their awa. It's actually been really, really positive. The work's going really well. We're expecting that all the expressions of visions and values will be delivered before the end of the year. And this will really help in the next phase of drafting and all that work that we're doing in Kotahi. The table included in the paper, just very briefly, there's a couple of green lines. They were actually just meant to be circles. It was really just to convey that everything's on track. It's just a bit of a formatting issue. And the comments, the summary comments, sort of just summarise at that point in time where the contracts were at. But there's also been some further good news that wasn't included at that time because obviously we wrote this a few weeks ago. There's now a close agreement, I could say, with Maungahururu.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, very, very close.
The last cab off the rank.
That's really, really good
About
news.
to roar off.
So we could write that in there now. Yeah, and otherwise, with Ngāti Ruapani as well. We've been in contact with them and had a quick discussion with Nikki at lunchtime as well. So we're carrying on in that space as well. Otherwise, if you don't have anything else to add, Bianca, I'll take the paper as read and open to any partai.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you. Hey, really positive news and congratulations team on getting these over the line. And so MTT's nearly there, Tanya. Yep, kapai, and then we're all on board. So remind us when you started the engagement. Was it the start of this year? March this year?
Yeah, so the contracts were signed this year. We'd been talking about it previously, but we've signed those.
Varying stages.
Yeah, I think Mana Ahuriri and then TPW and the other one, and maybe Bianca can speak to it, was we've done a bit of a variation with the Mohaka project group as well to align their work with where we are. So, yeah.
Ilda, thank you. Are there any partai or comments for the team? Nick?
I just wanted to say on behalf of the staff who I work with at HBRC, just a huge thank you to for all of those post-settlement governance entities that are entering into that mahi, and the opportunity to co-write and co-design things is a new experience for us, but we're learning plenty along the way as well. So it was just really to say thank you for the spirit in which it's occurring.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
And I just want to total with that because Mike Mohi's not here, but Him and I have probably been on this for quite some time, and we've never had this, what feels like a organic approach to doing this mahi, which, we'll work things out as we go along, but I think it's really positive. Talking is good. Talking about the issues is good.
Yeah, and on behalf of Mana Ahuriri, thank you as well, because I know you did some work earlier on with Mana Ahuriri, And so what's happening now is obviously a good thing because it wasn't happening in the past. So that's got to be a positive thing for everyone. So kia ora.
Just a partai around sharing expertise within the teams. How is that envisaged to work? Will some of the PSG tile staff come and work in our office alongside you? So it's like a capacity building sort of experience for both parties? Yeah.
So we're probably almost jumping into the next paper a little bit, but I can talk to that. So part of what we have been doing with our practitioners group is we've got a really open door policy in our team. Anybody that would like to come into our team, we're more than happy to come sit with them, be early on in that engagement. But it's also access to things like we've done some really cool maps for Tamatea Pōkai Whenua and things like that. And so sharing all of that knowledge. But I would just like to acknowledge the knowledge that is being shared with my team and the willingness to share that has just been something that's been a really neat space for us to be in. And I think the willingness to be collaborative and open is really a really positive step forward. So I don't know, we've got Di here from Tamatea Pōkai Whenua who she's been involved with that. I don't know if you want to speak to that from your experiences.
Yeah, come on up, Di. Kia ora. Welcome with another hat on.
Just one, Al.
Kia ora ana. I've just arrived back. I just wanted to reiterate what the team have said here about the collaborative nature. It is groundbreaking. We acknowledge that. We're really excited to be in this space of sharing, and often when the technicians come together from the PSGEs collaboratively with the team here, it's a safe space for us to be in as well. We often say that no question's a dumb question, but let's be honest with one another. So that has set the scene for some really good, healthy debates and learning about one another as well. We've got some strong advocates in the group, obviously, and we want to make it more of a partnership like it's never been before. And that's probably been one of the key things here is about partnership. We're not a stakeholder, we're not a community group. We're a partner in this and we want to co-design, co-write, co-draft everything and just like Nicola said, they're learning just as much off us as we are off them. So it helps when we're all learning together because, you know, writing a plan like this will be something probably some of us planners will never do in our lifetime to write such a big plan ever like this. So it's a big learning curve, but we're learning together, which is really, really safe for us to learn together. So, yeah.
Apai, kia ora, Di.
Kia ora, I've got a
Yeah, kia ora.
through the chair. Thanks, Di, for that. And probably what we wanted to make quite clear from a governance perspective is that those are technicians, not to make decisions, and that the feedback should come back through. And that was the reason why myself, Tani and Ricky met with Nicola and Katrina last week to ensure there is a feedback loop coming back through because sometimes the messages get lost and aren't fed back to the governors sitting around the table. So if we can make sure that that does happen, thank you.
And that was kind of part of what we were hoping and working together was that that we could bring those taiao practitioners in to the space to help support the tangata whenua governors in this space as well, so that it is that partnership model, so that this committee becomes just that real reflection of the partnership that I think it was intended to be in its creation. So,
awesome. Hey, I have a partai on para 9 around how PSGEs are expected to collaborate with hapu, marae and tai whenua within their rohe when undertaking this kaupapa. Can you just tease that out for us, how that looks, how the expectations, what is expected to come back when? And at what level?
Absolutely. So we'll let Di speak to this as well, but in that group we've been having conversations, and the PSGEs are really keen to lead that work, and they've been really keen to put their hand up, and they understand that they kind of have those connections into those groups, and we're happy to be there in a supporting role in terms of technical knowledge or anything that needs to support those conversations. And then, did you want to add in?
I guess.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say it might look different in different areas as well, depending on the makeup of that area and how they work. So there's a little bit of flexibility around that as well. Sorry.
I was just going to say though, that collaboration is in terms of informing the conversations that are happening at an operations level. But just to be clear, that's not the consultation phase, or it still sits with HBRC.
Is it almost pre-engagement before? Pre-engagement. Before the community-wide engagement. Once notified.
So that's
pre-notified.
that's the partnerships. Whereas once we get into that Schedule 1 RMA process, that's something different again.
Okay, kia ora. Di, did you have anything to add?
I was just going to add to that to say, because this plan-making process is so big and it's so new, even us as technicians from PSG, we've got to learn about the chapters that have been written inside this plan in order to then reinterpret it to our whānau in a manner that they can understand, because this is it's quite technical, and to reframe it down to our communities and then feed it back up. There's a lot of, I guess, capability building for all of us, for our whānau, for us as technicians, for the regional council as the regulator, and so this going back, up and down and up and down. We're still trying to get our head around how we're going to frame that for our whānau, because the technical pieces of work, how do you throw a piece of technical at our whānau for them to understand what on earth we're talking about? So we're still trying to get our heads around it as well.
Any other pātai for the team up here? Well, just a huge congratulations and leadership from your team, really, to take this to a different level. So well done.
Sorry, I just wanted to sneak one more thing in there.
Okay.
Is that we're very excited about, as a group, we've got we've got a policy drafting session booked in with Tina Parau. So she's going to come and sit with the PSG staff and us to work on how we do that drafting and really understanding that. So it's a real upskill space as well. So.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that the PSGEs who you're working with in terms of the MOUs are through their CEO first and then someone through their TIL team? Is that how it?
Absolutely.
The conversation's gone? Okay.
Yeah.
Ka pai. Awesome. Kia ora, team.
Yeah, so we're still on item 7. No, I think
we're still on item 7, yeah. Once we get our quorum, we'll wrap it all up and pass them.
Zan's just joined.
Oh, and Zan's just joined. Kia ora, Zan. Perfect. You're our last number.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Oh, where are you, Zan? We need 12, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I'll turn my sound off for the echo.
13, 14. No, we've got 14. Because Zan, yeah. Ka pai. Kia ora. Okay, that leads us nicely into our decision items. So if we can start with item 4, the Kotahi update, please.
So we've probably started to touch on a little bit of this, but I'll just run you through it. So this paper is a follow-up from the last RPC meeting we had, where we asked for your endorsement of us to go away, think about how we're going to work as PSG and HBRC on Kotahi. So the paper, although it's got Di's name there and Heather's, it was put in front of all of the PSGEs, and all of the staff that were there had looked over it, and we wrote it collaboratively. We also had some great input from Kate MacArthur on behalf of the Mohaka team as well. So it was really great to have that feedback. But there's basically breaks it down into 3 requests. So the first is that way of working. So that's that practitioners group that we've kind of mentioned just in that previous item, but we'd just like that formal endorsement of that way of working together, taking on board the comments about making sure that we're getting all of those feedback loops as well. So, and like Di said, it's the first time we've done this. We're breaking new ground, so we're learning as we go along. So that's really cool to get that feedback. Part of the conversation that we had a really good conversation when we were talking about setting up this group, and part of the concerns that were raised were around constraints, resourcing, transparency, making sure we're upskilling. But kind of counter to that was that real, really honest desire to collaborate and figure out a way of working that really reflected that partnership. So that was a neat space to be in, I think. So what we were proposing was that we would set up a practitioners group that reflects the makeup of this RPC, and that would help to support this RPC as well as technicians. And yeah, so the idea would be that we would meet twice monthly. One would be kind of a shorter wānanga or hui. One would be a shorter hui online, and then one could be a longer wānanga or hui session, depending on what we were kind of needing. So that idea of getting together with hosts rotating, HBRC or other PSGEs, which is a really neat way to get out into that place and meet those staff a bit more broader. Also part of that is we're really welcoming of any of the Tayo staff coming into the buildings with us and having meetings and having those discussions. So that's the idea around the group and kind of what its purpose would be. Out of those conversations came a desire to have a name or an identity for the group that spoke to the work we were doing. Also, I think because there were multiple meetings with the same titles and we were kind of losing track of which group was going where. But part of the conversations that we had with the Tayo staff from the PSGs and our Māori partnerships team were around those 3 concepts of a name and an identity. So one was the whakamata korowai, which was that first line of weaving. The second was tira kai o te waka, the sail of the waka. And the third one was ki te mātua, the hook. So they've all got really beautiful symbology, and Anthony from our Māori Partnerships team helped support us with those ideas as well. So happy to have a bit more of a conversation about this, or if there's any alternate ideas for an identity and a name, happy to welcome that as well. And then the third part of it was a proposed draft timeline, and so apologies that was a little bit blurry in the paper, but hopefully that attachment got sent out, and that just talked through the different decision points for the RPC and the engagement that we'll work through as well as part of that. So it's a very quick and brief overview. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that, Di?
I just probably wanted to share with you about who the actual technician groups are, so you could sort of align yourself. So it's taken us a little while to get our hands on who our technicians and our PSGEs were and who were available and who were out there. It's not a closed group, but I'll just give you a bit of a background of who we are so you can understand where we're coming from when we're writing this plan. So in Tamatea Pōkai Whenua, we've got 3 technicians. So there's myself, Heather Bosselman. She's actually a trained lawyer, but she is now a policy writer. And we're just employing a new planner starting this, next week. We've got Tiana Edwards from Mana Ahuriri. We've had Diana.
We've got Gareth joining us from Mana Ahuriri as well, so we've met with Gareth this week, so yeah.
Cool. And we've got Diana Taunoa from Angaharuru, Tangitu, holding that space with us. We've got Catherine Gale, we've got Bonnie Hatami, we've got Kate MacArthur, and we've got Lara Taylor. So we're really pleased to have those four just recently join our group. They've all, you know, we've got an ecologist, we've got a master's in environmental management. Lara, actually, we're pretty lucky to nab Lara. So Lara is actually the president of the Te Papa Pounamu Māori Interest Group for New Zealand Planning Institute. So she's joined the group. So she's a planner, so quite an experienced planner. So we're very happy to have her join us. We've had Jared Puller from Haneuru holding that space until Koriana Hoka comes back from maternity leave. Koriana is a planner. We've got Anna Galvin from Tātou Te Wairoa in our PSG technicians group. So in total, we've got 12 technician, in our PSGE group. And did I see Ricky out the back?
Oh, yeah, he hasn't come back on.
Should we join Ricky into our...
Yeah, we should join Ricky.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that takes it to 13, which really is quite a large group for PSGEs to pull us all together. And initially that's what it was about, collaborating, getting our PSGEs to collaborate and pull us all together so that we could work side by side with Regional Council. So that, I think, is a real coup for us to pull that many technicians together, to have 13 of us PSG technicians in the same room with Regional Council is quite powerful and quite strong. And by no means this is a big plan to write, and we know we've got a lot of work to do in the next 3 years. We're going to need that many technicians. Our job obviously is to definitely, and now that we have seemed to have got a core group of people, our job now, and we've just talked about this, is to also now bring our RPC members along into the group, introduce who we are, what are we doing, so that you could understand. Apologies if that hasn't happened up until now. It was just us trying to form our technicians group and get our hands on who was out there and where were they and who were they, in order to pull them into this plan making process. So that now that we have, our next messaging was to make sure that they touch base with their RPC members and pull them in and update them on everything that we were doing, so that they knew what was going on all the time. Yeah, so that's me.
Kia ora, thank you. Kōrua. Questions before we move into the recommendations? I've got one timeline. Oh, sorry, aroha mai, Michelle.
It hasn't been discussed at the Tātou Te Wairoa table. Actually, I didn't even know you folks were doing this. It came up, it was mentioned in our Taio manager's report. It was the first time I'd heard of it. So this isn't being endorsed fully from our board. We've got another meeting next week. So there's something we need to discuss. So it's just a bit about the cart before the horse. You're naming the rōpū and the governors aren't quite clear on all of this. So
We had introduced it March.
Kia ora, Jenny.
We had introduced it to the rōpū in a March hui when we first got together. Yeah. It was the same hui that they had the mātauranga framework.
I know the freshwater contract, that's the only thing I know of back home, and this is a surprise. So, I wanted to bring it up. It's already just, all this will be sent to our board and we'll discuss it.
Yeah, is the expectation from this meeting and these recommendations to go back to each of the reciprocal boards for endorsement, or even to terms of reference?
That'll be good.
Yep. Does it need to go back? Sure. We're fluid.
Yeah, just to keep the communication open around what's happening.
Yeah, I think I really welcome the work that's being done, and I completely understand what Michelle is saying, because I had to check with our CEO, because Diane is our admin person, so, and we're recruiting currently. So it would be really useful to formalise it a little bit so that everybody's clear about the membership and the purpose, and maybe have some terms of reference. Doesn't need to be too heavy, but that would be something that could then go to each of the boards so that they're really clear about what the engagement their staff are having, particularly given some of the things we've talked about ops and then decision-making by governance. So for terms of reference could be, and then maybe in that same thing there could be a tono or a request for support for a name, because I think the names you've chosen, you've put up there are beautiful. I'm happy for the group to choose their own name, but that would be you'd be able to introduce that as well. There was a couple of things that when we had met as tangata whenua that we discussed, and it's a shame Ricky's not online because he had provided us with some recommendations. So one of them was to have a terms of reference and just make sure we got clear support from each of the PSGs for the people that are there talking on their behalf. And just understanding if there are decisions being made around the direction of things in that group, how is that going to happen? Because it might be done by consensus, but probably there'll be things you don't agree on.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that we've been really clear on, is that there will be a very high chance there are things that we wouldn't agree on. So happy to flesh that out in terms of reference or however, but the direction of travel would be that it would come back to this group, and there would be different policy options or approaches put up, and so we wouldn't be looking to make that decision. It would be back to the governors.
Yep, that's great. The second one was, given the different places of each of the PSGEs in their vision and values and work towards particularly the land and water part of what we're talking about, which is probably the biggest priority, some process around how this is going to be developed iteratively, ensuring that all can be fed in. Because some PSGs are just more prepared than others right now.
Absolutely, and that would be...
We'd be one of the least prepared.
Yeah, and we'll be taking guidance from our Pahu Wera whānau who've been doing this for a couple of years.
One of the most prepared,
So it's just differences in the timing and funding and, all of that.
Just to add to that, it's not just Pahu Wera, it's also Tūwharetō and Niuru.
Yeah, too. Yeah. And then the other one is, probably we'll come to it, well, mind you, you've mentioned the RPS. The question was raised whether it would be useful, we think it would be useful to have a presentation and discussion around the pros and cons of notifying the RPS separately from the plan change, particularly given some of the things that Martin's raised and we're all aware of. But just so that we all really understand that clearly. I know we've had that before, but it would be good to have that again, I think.
Through you, Chair, when we had our RPC hui in March, that was when we discussed that at the point that we are ready to have a pre-consultation draft, we would absolutely be coming back to the RPC to discuss the pros and cons, the whys, the wherefores of going or not going. And so absolutely that is our intention when we've got something firmed up.
Is the timing such that we'll know all those NPS stuff, will they all have spat out by that stage?
We anticipate what we're hearing from central government is that they are aiming for the end of this year for RMA reform draft to land. So we just have to keep going, making sure we're aligned as much as possible, and we will keep you updated as much as we know when we know.
And there's nothing to say that once you start that plan notification process, there are points along that journey that you can alter plans to amend, to update to the current MPSFM, which is exactly what we're doing with the tank plan change at the moment, given that that was notified under the MPSFM 2017, and now we've got the 2020 coming out, we're having to amend it through this process to catch it up to date. So,
Or potentially back those out,
yeah,
depending on what's coming out from central government on EPS.
I think some of the central government reform stuff hasn't been well thought through, even though you say, here's the draft, it's landed, but actually when you pick it up and look at it,
Oh, you're correct.
it's not the standard you would expect.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yep, same as you.
I'm not expecting much, is what I'm saying.
Just so that we understand the technicians' participation in the rūpū, that's come about from a request to each CE to have a technician come into being a part of the rūpū, because I just want to understand the accountability back to each person's board around informing them well that this has happened, if they have been in the conversation, which I'm guessing they have. And it's really just about formalising back to the board and the governors what the operations within each PSGE have arranged in terms of the practitioners coming together.
Yeah, that's right. So way back when, Te Wairama and I did a regional roundup of all of the CEs. I think we've been to most, have we not? Met with all of them.
Yeah,
I think pre-March and leading in, and that's how we ended up with the contract's been in place. So there was the conversation initially with Te Wairama and I going out and saying, here's what our program of work looks like for the next couple of years. Really keen to engage with the PSGs in this way. What do you think? And those conversations happened. We then engaged with each of your CEs and talked about the contracts, what that work looks like, and in those conversations talked about how we would like their staff to work alongside our staff. And so that's where this direction has originated from. Ultimately, I set my guidance from my CE who says, Katrina, go off and do this. And so ultimately, that's what your staff have done as well.
Kia ora. Could I?
It hasn't been clear for us governance. No.
Kia ora, Jenny.
Kia ora. So just rest assured, I've been following from where I am to here. So the conversation is.
Thank you for doing that.
I would like to see some terms, like I congratulate, finally. I mean, I've been involved since '94, and it shows age. And so this is a good thing. Engari, there is, we don't want it to lose its direction scope. So terms of reference would be really good, signed off by. So whilst the CEs might be in charge of the technicians, the chairs and the board are in charge of the CEs. And the other thing that I'm always concerned about is, as treaty partners, we're not to be consulted, we're to be notified and then engaged in a discussion. There is a different approach. And whilst all our technicians are amicably, awesomely qualified, engagement with Māori, since '94, since I started in this space, always knowing which Māori to talk to about what kaupapa has been the issue. So engagement is where I think PSGs and their boards can really facilitate this group. So I'm asking, and if there are terms of reference, excuse me, I'm in and out of Stella at the moment, so I don't know what's available. But terms of reference signed off by boards would be a really good safe space for our planners, our PSG planners, as well as the relationship with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. So I know, a bit like Michelle, it hasn't come to a board level, just in informing at a board level. I understand the challenges of our technicians, trying to unpack all that and then pack it up. So this is not a criticism, it's just we have to figure out a pathway forward. And in the first instance, with our technicians, we really do need those terms of reference signed off by boards to protect them. I'm concerned about them in the first instance. And then, whilst there was a lot of discussions about the pace of the government and how many changes have been made and how responsive we have to be, we have to shore up our pathway. And the Kotahi plan, there's been a lot of angst around it, so there needs to be some socialising, some good critical points of socialising, not only with Māori but with constituencies, because we're all stuck in this, to help shore a pathway. Because it should be adaptive depending, no matter who's in power as a government. At the moment, we're all pivoting. So that has its own challenges. So a pathway that's adaptive, that's inclusive, that includes the time it takes to engage with whānau is really, really important. Everything's always been rushed by and we end up getting caught. Whānau, I did listen, the whānau need to understand it. Believe me, 30 years in treaty process, you become a bush lawyer. And this is no different, and our whānau are adaptive. But if we don't get it right at this pace, they'll end up in mediation. Tanks what? Over a decade long. I was there at the beginning. How frickin' sad is that? And so our people are there. So if we can spend a bit of time at the front end on figuring out how to use everyone's time wisely in a world that's very paced, and we're pivoting so much, we're going to put our necks out, actually. So, yeah, it's just how can we shore that up and think along the side of the pace that we have to do. So I suppose to sum it up, I need protections. I'm looking for protections for our technicians, all the technicians, including Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Protection in those terms of reference that supports and upholds the mana of the PSGs. Took a long time to get them there, so we don't want to lose. We wanted a mana enhancing role. And 3, whatever the pathway is with Kotahi, because it's been bandied about not as long as tank, but give it time. We just need a pathway to just make some, even if it's just small incremental steps. It's pretty hard to continue to be progressive and focused when you're paralysed every 2 months. So I'm sure there are people smart enough here to figure out how to do that alongside whatever the government pace and direction is. So kia kaha whānau, kia ora.
Kia ora, some great suggestions in there, Jenny. Thank you. Nick?
If everybody's finished that bit of korero, I'm just going to suggest a way forward that might.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Look, I think, and thank you for the korero, I think it's really helpful. I think whenever you enter a relationship, you're always learning how to trust each other and then to protect each other when things go a little bit askew and awry, as they always do somewhere down a process. But also to preserve the independence of people's decision-making, both the decision-making of this committee, but also the decision-making that each of the PSGEs has on their own as to whether they agree or don't agree with some aspect of a plan. So I think a terms of reference is a really useful idea, and if the yet-to-be-named Rōpū could put together a draft terms of reference, I would be happy to go to each of the chief executives with that draft terms of reference and leave it with those individual CEs and their boards to work out how they want to deal with it. And that might vary between different PSGs, but with the idea that however that internal decision-making gets done is that they come back and then we can table the response to this committee at your next hui. But in a spirit of openness, we ask our kaimahi to keep
working together.
Keep working, knowing that process is going on in the background.
Good point. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to propose I was actually going to move the paper and propose an amendment to item 2 regarding the terms of reference. If that's premature, but
Yeah.
And it was essentially also going to pick up on Tanya's comments that I'd rather leave the name to the group.
Yes. I
Other people
agree.
may have different views, but I don't want to spend precious time talking about a name.
Yeah.
Let the group work that one out.
Yes.
They're all great options. So the suggestion I have was that you could say 2, approves the proposed way of working together, etc., subject to terms of reference to be approved by each entity before the next meeting or something like that. But
Yep. Ka pai. It's a good amendment. And 3, approves the proposed timeline. Was that included,
yes.
Martin?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely approved.
And then just leave
Not that
4.
I've yet seen it, but
So really it's 1, 2 and 3 with that addition of 2, subject to terms of
to be
reference.
approved by each.
Individual PSG board.
Yeah, and I agree with Martin. Can I just add one little thing?
Yeah, sure.
It was just in relation to approving the proposed timeline, which I think we all know is maybe. So, yeah, approves in principle the proposed timeline.
In principle.
Because we just don't know.
Don't know yet.
Yeah.
Approve in principle.
And then did you want to go for 4, under 4.4, you could put just group to determine name?
Yep.
Thank you.
Approves the group to.
Yeah.
Ka pai. So we've got a mover, Councillor Williams, and a seconder, Tanya. Any other comments before we move forward?
Just a comment, agree. But I'm just reflecting back to Elwood Park, when we were all together prior to us onboarding Te Mātai Ao, and the ridiculousness of the takiwā exchanges and all that kind of stuff. And this has progressed in a positive direction, I believe, given from where it began, pre-Nick. So well done. You're finally listening, so well done. And we still need to get those steps right. And in total agreement with what Jen had said, which party you are speaking to, and it's got to be clear that we hold our own rangatiratanga around this table. Yes, we come to the table collectively, but we all hold our own rangatiratanga. So thank you very much to the team. Thank you for cracking that whip, Nick, and thank you. Awesome. I'm excited.
Kia ora tātou. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, just on, I guess, speaking to the motion as one of the movers, I think that cuts both ways as well. There's a comment that Chair Haniwai, you mentioned about the need for the values and vision work to be socialised at each PSG board table. And I think that's a challenge on all of us as governors to check in with our respective communities to ensure that, when this plan is launched, people know what's coming. Because the last thing we want is a plan that's put on the community. It needs to be a plan that they've already been part of shaping, and that's all of our communities that we represent, and they're a diverse and broad church. So that's as much on elected representatives as PSG reps as everyone else at this governance table, so that we can share the journey going forward. And the very last thing we want to see is a repeat of the tank process. And so the staff are working together in that weaved way, which is absolutely fantastic, each reporting up. The next paper is about the policy direction that this table sets. And I think that's where we speak. So there's the drafting, there's the values and vision, and there's the issues, that's great. But the policy direction around all of that has to come from this collective tepu, and each of us speaking to our communities that we're accountable in turn. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor Williams. There are no other speakers. We've got those motions on the table. All of those who agree, say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Kia ora. Thank you, team. Okay, we move on to our last item, which is item 5, the Regional Policy Statement, Issues and Options Development. So before we lead into that, Tanya and I just want to share a few words as co-chairs. Look, this is vitally important mahi. This is one of the core pieces of work we need to do as governors, to direct our now co-staff, co-practitioners, on developing very quickly important chapters of the RPS. So today is our first go, and I'm really seeking from you all the careful, mindful sequencing of how we do these workshops going forward. And it is going to take a lot more kaha and probably meeting and workshops. So I want you to really consider that for us to get through the mahi to be able to notify our community. So this is a very important time where we set the agenda moving forward. I'll hand it over to you, Tanya.
Yeah, I agree. And also, there are many kaupapa that this RPS is looking to delve into, many of which will be really important to all of our constituencies. And I think being as organised as we can from today onwards about when we're going to meet, what we're going to talk about, how we're going to prioritise things is really key to making sure that we're all across what we believe we need to be across. I accept that for some of the PSGEs and some of the councillors, there will be particular kaupapa that are of great significance to your people. And so I'd like to see us work a way where people can focus on those things that are really important to them. I'm not sure that all of us need to be across all the kaupapa as deep and as broad as we might like to. I just don't think that's pragmatic. So I'm really looking and hoping that out of today we can think about how we can do this really in a smart way, where by the time we get to notifying the RPS, we feel we've had really good coverage between us and at a high level across all of us. So yeah, just trying to think how we do this smart. I don't have the answers, and maybe some of you, I hope, will have the answers how we do that, but it's quite a short time frame. Because most people have been focused on land and water, but when you look at all the other kaupapa, how are we going to get around all of that in time for notifying by mid next year? That's a big ask. So I think it will take, as Haniwai said, some commitment to extra workshops.
Cool. So you've got the paper in front of you. Basically, this paper was really just a set of questions asking how you would like to do those workshops. But I thought in order to support those questions, I might, I've got a wee presentation and take us backwards a little bit to go forward. So hopefully this will come up.
Can I just add as well, Nicola, is, you know, for the last 18 months, we've all quite rightly had recovery mahi to get on with our people in our communities. But now's the time where we have a lot more data and intelligence around what happened, particularly around the hazards and risks section. And it's also the right time, regardless of what the government is doing, we have a better steer on what's more urgent and less urgent. But we've also done the kotahi work, which I'd like us to just touch on, where there has been some prior engagement with our communities on these chapters. And so what we're looking to do is really accelerate the most important pieces of work we want to concentrate on the RPS. Oh boy, so now I hand it over.
All good. So just, I thought we'll just go back kind of that one step before we go forward. So just, so we're kind of clear in our minds. Currently we have our regional policy statement, we have our regional resource management plan, and we have our coastal environment plan. So the regional policy statement, like we were talking before, is that big high level document that sets the direction, identifies our issues, sets the direction. The resource management is where the rules sit, so that gets down to a more granular level, and that's what triggers consents, etc. Then our coastal plan sits separately to those plans, but has its own issues and rules. And so what Kotahi is looking to do is to put those together, but at the moment we're in that space of accelerating the RPS because of the direction we need in the region and the current travel by the government. So when we talk about Kotahi, there's Kotahi the project in terms of all of those three pieces, and we would be looking to integrate the coastal environment into that plan, because if you think about the coastal being a receiving environment, what happens on land ends up in our coast, so it doesn't make sense to have it separate. So that's that little blue box to the side. In that middle bit, so those are our 11 surface water catchments plus our 2 aquifers on there as well. So those are kind of those biophysical catchments that we're using to kind of look at the environmental impacts in those areas. And then on the other side, we've got the little bubbles there, and those are the topics that we're required to include in our planning documents under the RPS. So we've got topic for mana whenua, we've got a topic for energy infrastructure and transport, we've obviously got the coastal space, we've got climate change, which will be a new topic in the plan, integrated management. Now that's just how we deal with things in an integrated approach, so how we deal with them together, or when we've got competing values or issues, how we deal with those. Natural hazards, urban form and development, then we've got land and freshwater, we've got biodiversity and ecosystems, so that again will be a new topic for our plan. We currently don't have any provisions around that, and then we have air, so that's in a kind of a one page, but I thought what I would do so that you can kind of help thinking maybe about where your priorities might lie or which ones you might like to do a really big deep dive into, or ones you might want to take more of a lighter touch to, is just run through the topics, and I've got some of the team here that can speak to them as well if you've got questions. But when we're thinking about air, we're thinking about pollutants, we're thinking about odour, particulates, human health comes into that space as well, and contaminants. Land and freshwater, that's an absolute behemoth of a topic, but it's about resource use and allocation. We're thinking about water quality, protecting our soils, our wetlands, forestry, there's heaps of stuff that in there.
And Nicola, that's predominantly where the MOU sit with PSGEs.
Yes, so what we did was when we set up the contracts with the PSGEs, we said we need your freshwater visions and values as per the NPSFM, that will inform that land and freshwater space. However, if you choose to do a broader approach, you want to look at the entirety of the tau, or you wanted to do an iwi hapu management plan, as long as we can find those visions and values within that wider mahi, happy as well. So but that's been the driver for that work. Coastal,
Sorry, through the chair, just ask a question, and thank you for that, and so that's cool for us.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in Martin's point around getting, this input from the community as well. And I'm interested to hear how that's going to happen too. Are you going to get to that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just in the process of sitting down with our comms team to work out a really thorough engagement plan, and the community stakeholders, rural communities as well, will be a part of that. And so there's kind of different threads that I see weaving together. You've got the PSG work, mana whenua, we've got also the work that we're doing in the community, and then we've also got the engagement that we're going to have with this around this table with our governors as well, and those are the strands that we bring together. So yeah, coastal sediment, resilience to environmental stresses, access and use around the coastal space, with our biodiversity and ecosystems, a lot of the issues around destruction of habitat, the impacts that our biodiversity faces with climate change, and sorry, that's cut off, but just that continued pressures that our biodiversity and ecosystems are facing. The mana whenua chapter is prescribed under the National Planning Standards, and that chapter is about process, so how we engage with mana whenua, how we recognise the relationships, what the involvement is, how do we make sure we've got that provision for participation, and how we're incorporating mātauranga. So that's to say that those specific issues get they get included in that mana whenua space, but our expectation in working with the Tau group and what we've heard around this table before is that there would be a mana whenua provision in each of these topics. So there would be an expression about mana whenua's objectives, or what they would like to see, so in biodiversity as well as natural hazards, and so it gets woven throughout the plan. So
So on that, I mean, the question is, if it's woven in each of the chapters, does it need to be one on its own still?
So so that one is just about process, so it's a
Oh,
real.
the process,
Yeah,
sorry.
and so
Yeah,
this one
okay.
over here might be, how does climate change disproportionately affect mana whenua under the climate change topic, if that makes sense? Yeah.
Part-time? Yeah. Whose process is it? Is it the regional council's process of engagement or their responsibilities to ensure mana whenua are to be inclusive in the Kotahi plan? So is it directed for the use of the regional council, or how do PSGs fit in there? How do mana whenua fit in there?
So that chapter would be written with mana whenua on how we're going to work together. So it's not us telling us how we're going to do it, it's an agreement of how we would work together and what the expectations are.
Okay, now I'm just
Yeah,
trying to figure out who's who in the zoo.
Yeah.
So are we talking about, because you started off with how we're going to engage with mana whenua, or is this a bigger conversation now on what's involved in the RPS?
This is just a chapter
Yeah, so that's one chapter within the RPS.
that we're required to have anyway.
Yeah.
But the underlining question is how we will engage, is that the
That's
question?
what we've all been talking
It's
about.
it also recognises the iwi and hapu of the region, so it goes, in other RPSs, it will go in and have a recognition of iwi, hapu, marae. It acknowledges, it will have a space about the regional planning committee, the processes that we have. So it's really, probably it's about what we have in our region that could be different and recognising that, so, yeah.
Thompson and then Martin. Thompson.
Kia ora tātou, tuatahi nei ka kōrero au I roto I te reo Māori kia whakanui, kia whakarangatiri I tō tātou nei wiki o te reo Māori.
Ai.
Ka noho rāhui o te wāputo. Nō reira, tēnei au ka kia whakamārama atu ai ki a tātou, he hihia nōku ki enei mahi ki te whakanui te kite atu rā e te Māori partnerships me o rātou mahi ki roto I enei take. Kua whakatakato I a tātou mō tēnei wānanga, mō tēnei kōrero. So, just quickly, acknowledging te wiki o te reo Māori, and that sort of triggered some light bulb moments as I was just following the conversation and the commentary, is that there's probably some communication tools that already exist in terms of the how we engage with mana whenua. There's some language tools that already exist, and I think by and large there's a lot that's sitting in our operations by way of our Māori partnerships team. So I think it would be helpful that we see a vivid participation by our Māori partnerships team in all of this, to probably bridge some of those language of understanding and the communications. And it goes a little bit towards what Jenny was raising in her partai. As a board, it's a little bit more broad into how we language that and how we receive that and how we translate that, how we filter that. And I think it's very important.
Te Wairama, do you want to respond to that? Not that it was a partai, but it's more
And we see, I guess if it was framed up as a partai, ka tae tātou te kite atu I te Māori partnerships, e whakamahi o koutou pūkenga rawa ki roto I enei take katoa.
Kia ora, through you, Chair. Tēnā koe, Councillor Hokianga. Ko tā mātou mahi I tēnei wahanga kia noho ngātahi ki ngā practitioners rōpū I roto I tō rātou urunga mai ki roto I enei processes. Engari, me ki te, ko te, mai a mātou Māori partnerships ka taia e koutou te kite I wera pukinga I ngā mahi
I hara mai ana. So kia ora, Councillor, yes. Māori Partnerships is sitting alongside the Policy and Planning Group in the mahi that is coming to fruition with the Taiao Practitioners Group. But thank you for that kōrero, and yes, we'll ensure that those pukenga can be seen in future mahi. Kia ora.
Kia
ora. Martin, kia ora.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of observations and a couple of questions, if I may. Just that we would hope that if the other papers we've been discussing are true to their intention, Mana Whenua will see themselves in every paragraph of this plan as much as other parts of the community will as well. So it should be that shared weave. The issue of priorities, we had a steer from the CEO that perhaps we need to put natural hazards right on the top, so I support that. The question I had is that I feel like I'm stuck in Groundhog Day here as a second term councillor. I remember sitting in various hui in the last few years with these very topics, sitting around tables with post-it notes.
Post-it notes, yeah.
We've had engagement, we've had, what do you call it, drop-ins with our community up and down the Rohi in 2022 around all of this. So the first question is, have we captured all of the previous work around issues and priorities for these topics?
Absolutely. So previously you had told us that land and freshwater, biodiversity and climate change were your priorities. I wanted to check in
what
with...
happened?
I can't remember. I'm a bit busy for a while there. So I wanted to check in with you that they were still your priorities, or if you might like to reshape those. And I think the difference of where we are is where we would like to come to you next time is with some very early days or very early doors thinking around some draft direction in terms of policy. So you can, because we've taken all of that engagement, not only did we take that, but the engagement that was done after the cyclone as well, we've been able to glean some insights out of that, especially around that natural hazard space as well. And then, we would be looking to move that next step. So
that'll form the options that come to us for policy setting, and there'll also be the recovery plan work as well.
Absolutely.
The second part, if I may, is, I was wondering, why don't we just stick tank on hold? We've got a plan, it's decisions, we've got land and water there, right? 4 of the catchments are kind of already going through their own gig for about the last 15 years. How does tank in this process integrate, remind me please, as to land and water? Do we start again within those catchments?
No, no.
We can take a vote.
So the plan that we had with that was to use as much as the tank plan as possible, and that was part of trying to get it as settled as possible so that we didn't have to revisit those issues. Also, the other thing that we were talking about is where we had some policy within tank that actually could be applied region-wide, so it was good policy. It might be around wetlands or riparian planting, that we could elevate that up into across the region rather than it just sitting within its within those catchments.
Thank you.
So you're going to finish going through those?
Sorry. So I think we got to climate change. So climate change is around the impacts that it's having on the environment, the contribution that we're making to climate change as people in our region, and our ability to respond. So there's a real crossover there with natural hazards because of climate change exacerbating those natural hazard risks as well. Moving into natural hazards, so it's the impacts to the events, it's that climate change interconnection, it's our ability to respond to these events and looking at communities that are able to respond versus those that might not be able to respond as easily, and how do we deal with that. Also, how do we talk about things like hard infrastructure and engineering versus managed retreat? So those are the kind of big conversations around that. Also, harking back to that paper around the flood review, intolerable risk, and what does that mean, and how are we going to work in that space? I'll save those other 2 little ones till last, but moving down to energy and infrastructure, again, talking about the resilience of our infrastructure. Our energy needs are set to increase, I think, by something like 60%. So how are we going to deal with those? what are our emissions from infrastructure and the built emissions, but also from running transport. Urban form and development, so that kind of sits alongside some of the FDS work as well, although thinking about it more broadly for the whole region. So what are our constraints in terms of maybe risks? What are locations for potential developments, but also the inverse of where we put people in development is what land do we want to protect and keep for highly productive lands and soils and things like that. So that's the inverse, and then integrated management I mentioned before, that's that cumulative effects, those multiple and competing values and the integration. Then alongside those topics, we have two that sit at a slightly higher level. So one is the significant resource management issues for the region. So this is identifying what are our really big things within this region. So they're region-wide issues, so they're not just catchment-based. They're significant, and quite often they'll sit at a level like things like environmental degradation or use of resources and allocation. So they're a very high level, big issues. And then the second one that we have with the issues is resource management issues of significance to iwi authorities. So that's those issues, and we've said that that's not for us to determine, it's for those iwi authorities to determine, and they're things that are specific to those iwi authorities. Yeah, there's examples around Pounamu in the South Island, Hangi Stones, things like that, but they could be broader again as well. So that's how those all kind of sit.
Can I just ask a question through the chair?
Kia ora.
Yeah, I know, and I guess that covers everything, you know, it could possibly cover. And you mentioned before urban development, and so sometimes there's going to be differences of opinions, I guess, between TLAs and mana whenua. And, you know, there's a lot of that gets experienced over the years, well before my time and probably well after it'll continue. And I'm just picking up like on urban development and the FDS and our aspirations for mana ahuriri, you know, and what we're trying to push may not align sometimes with what council or TLAs want, etc. So I'm looking for a way forward to make sure that our aspirations are actually recognised, you know, and what the process would be here when we get to some of these sticky points. Yeah.
Yep. So I can go into really technical planning detail, which I'm not sure that you want. You know where I'm going to go, but Katrina can speak to it probably more high level.
Yeah, look, ultimately, we agree on as much as we possibly can. But we're never ever going to agree on everything. And so in part of that planned development, there's always going to be room and opportunity for any group, whether that's there's room for any group to make a submission to the plan, right? And I think there's talk in the past that, we would develop this plan so to avoid the Environment Court. I think that's unrealistic, and I don't think that's actually fair. I think in a democratic country and the way that our legislation enables submissions and appeals to the Environment Court means that you can advocate for a position that you feel strongly about that maybe doesn't align with everybody else. And so that's where planning processes always take us. So we try to align as much as possible. Ultimately, we put out a plan subject to public consultation and submissions and appeals thereafter.
I know it's a bigger question.
It's
probably a whole day we can spend on it. Yeah, thank you for that. And I just wanted to raise it because I didn't raise it before when the FDS brief update was given, because I'm just pushing here for mana ahuriri aspirations around the Ahuriri station, I guess, and I want to know how this process will be, part of the RPS if it needs to be, or, which little pocket it sits in, or how
and
we
that- so
proceed
the-
this forward, yeah.
So through to the FDS, absolutely, the decisions from the FDS will come back into the RPS and start to be formulated part of the RPS development as well, so.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina.
It all goes
Because I
into the
just
mix.
wanted to say, have we got the project for you? Here
we go.
So remember it.
I think I've never heard
Change
of
it
it.
into a part-time, then we'll take it. We had Jenny. Kia ora, Jenny.
Kia ora. Kia ora for your response. My pātai and tonu to the council is, we're not other groups. Legislatively, we're not other groups.
Yeah.
So I would like to see a definition of what that partnership looks like. And it's not to say that we don't disagree, but it is to say that we afford the due respect as partners. We've worked too hard and too long to be viewed as a group or a stakeholder. So I just want to make that point. Secondly, you have catchments. Māori are excluded from catchment groups. They're not even included if they're a landowner. So we have already an issue of inclusion in order to participate. So whilst the regional council discusses catchments, it is at the personal request of that catchment whether Māori can be included. And I'll just use the example of the Whātuma Governance Catchment Group, Aorangi Trust Board, and the Māori landowners that are part of that. So there is a challenge in that. The other part is that, especially over the review, every Māori has been asked to come and feed back into every government agency involved in the review. And we've all fulfilled and qualified our time, free of charge, to support all of you to do your job. But no one's ever asked us what our priorities are in those areas. And it was really apparent, not just with Māori, but with communities and the community organiser meetings after the review. The review itself came out. No one's asking people or whānau what they think are the priorities in those critical areas. And if we take the time to figure out how to include that, we will get a richer information base by which to make decisions. So for far too long, we've been responding to everyone else, centrally and locally. And I think not only for Māori, but for everybody, because I saw it at those meetings, you need to ask us what are the priorities in each of those topics. I'm pretty sure by the end of this quarter, we'll all be told for it. There'll be toll charges for everything, because we've got to spin a buck, but I think we should afford that. I don't believe talking about each of those individual topics in a siloed manner does any good for anybody, and I've been to a lot of those meetings, and it spreads really good, talented people and informed people across a siloed approach to what is actually a regional environmental kaupapa. And so I would encourage for the regional council to look at access for Māori. It should be, I don't know why it isn't, but it should be a given that they're attending those catchment board meetings. 2, I would like to see a symposium-based sort of approach where you go to communities, a series of community huis, where you schedule a half an hour on each of those topics of informing, 15 minutes of informing just key points, and then asking those communities what they think in each of them. So having a day of it, having a series of days, as opposed to, well, I've seen the schedules for most of them. It's pretty hard to cover all bases. So to me, it would be a better stabilising of the discussion with the people for which it belongs to, because we make decisions on behalf of them. And whilst we're so focused on process for our legal requirements and responsibilities, we forget the integrity of the democracy, which is to talk to those people and them to feed back. So I don't know if this has been discussed. It certainly was battered around when I was in previously and on the Māori Consultative Committee, but we just can't keep doing it this way. It's just not going to hit.
So,
Kia ora, Jenny.
Yeah. So when I speak about catchments, I'm not actually referring to catchment groups. Our catchments are based on hydrographic science-based catchments, based on water catchments, land and water catchments. They're not catchment groups. So forgive me if I haven't made that clear. And we have in the absolutely, when we were all together in the all governors and talked about how we would do this. So, and that forms part of this paper that you have in front of you today, is absolutely goes to the heart of your point, which is how then do you want to engage in these topic areas? And one of the suggestions in the next slide is, do you want to do it topic-based, or is it by catchment? And by catchment I mean area, sorry, not group. And do we do it at place? Do we do it here? Do we do it all together? You know, what is that? And we're really sitting here today really to get some feedback. My apologies for referring to groups. I absolutely agree that that mana whenua are partners, absolutely. That is why we've taken the approach for our engagement that we have, and certainly that is not meant to be in any demeaning way at all, and simply just pointing out that it shouldn't ever be indicating that because we work in a partnership approach that you then can't by any right submit against the plan that you've worked on together. That remains a right for any person, iwi, hapu, marae, non-Māori, Māori.
So, kia ora, engagement from mana whenua at the bottom levels of engagement with the council, so those catchment groups should be inclusive in your thinking. If they're excluded in the catchment groups, then your definition of a catchment doesn't give any guarantees that they'll be included in those. So I'm not criticising, I'm saying we need to address it. And if you have a different idea or different definition of a catchment group, then I would encourage you to link your language together, because I've got to switch out and switch on for the same organisation. So one, I hold fast to the fact that Māori should be naturally included in catchment boards. And my question would be, they should be naturally, those catchment boards, included in the groupings. And the last thing is I'm moving for is not a siloed approach. I want a collaborative symposium approach that's quite dynamic, that actually spends 70% of its time listening to the people that attend. Ka pai?
Kia ora. Some good work that has been done before the cyclone was all the drop-ins, and I think it's a bit like symposium when you're there the whole day and people come in and they ask questions and you engage more one-on-one, so they're not spoken to at all, they're just capturing their knowledge and that information. I understand where you're coming from in the catchment groups. I think you're talking about the voluntary ones that come together within a catchment.
The farming catchment groups.
Yeah,
they might be voluntary, but I know they certainly shut the door on Māori partnerships and inclusivity on that.
Some do. I was just going to say there's a Waikato catchment group, which Pāhauera and ourselves were invited to, and in some of the meetings we've attended, not myself personally, but others have, they were quite open to having us there. I don't know if you've been, Charlie, you might have been there, Teresa, to the Waikato catchment group.
South of the region, not so successful.
Yeah, so I'm just saying in some areas, and I think it's quite good because they were, my recollection is that group was started by the local community, local farming community, and they opened the invite to us to come along, and it's a good place.
They've been going for a long time.
Yeah, so some of those, my understanding is they're they have set them up themselves, and in some cases, council has provided them support and they've also sought funding But I'm only ever aware in Ahuriri catchment group, open to Māori, but if it's not that case down south, well, then it might be something a bit different, but I haven't
Yeah.
experienced that. You guys? I've only ever seen them say, come and be part of the
Just
conversation.
through the chair, these are not criticisms, these are things that are occurring, and I would encourage and welcome the opportunity to work with the regional council to create a more inclusive process. Also, with the workshops, I would welcome the opportunity for it to land well and be, I suppose, backed up by the support of our communities in our area anyway. So, and I think a combined effort is what's required.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Aroha mai, I've got Di and then Michelle. Kia ora, Di.
Kia ora. Just listening in. So I work with all the catchment groups in the Wairoa area. I know the one at Ruakaturi, who I'm the
Out, Di.
for
Aroha mai, Di. You're cutting out. Yeah. Can I turn your
and I
picture
know all the
off?
others are equally. Your talk about. Can you not hear me?
No, I can't hear you.
Just turn your camera off.
Yeah. Kei te pai?
Camera, I think your camera.
Okay.
We
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yes, apologies. I was just saying that I do a lot of work with the catchment groups across the Wairoa area, and they are all, as you've described them there, Tānia, they're very inclusive. The one at Ruakaturi, we've got over 70% Māori land owners, including trusts and privately owned Māori land, and all the others are equally, it's very much just around who's in the community. Interested in the catchment boards. I don't think that I'm just not sure what that is.
No.
Is that something from back in the day?
I think we sort of got a bit off track, whānau.
I can do a Māori
And I know that we've probably only got another half an hour left till the meeting ends. So was that catchment related, or was that back to this mahi?
It's just a simple.
Might see at the airport, but you're probably in a different quarter club to me.
That one?
Go back a few slides, can we go there.
Yeah.
So the Wairoa catchment, why isn't it not incorporating mahi and Northern Coast, and why is
So
it separate?
literally the way.
Te Rohi or Te Wairoa, which includes them.
Yeah, so this is,
Where'd that come from?
so this is literally a biophysical catchment. So what it is, it's the topography of the land, and it's the way the land makes that water drain towards the sea. So it's got nothing to do with groups, it's got nothing to do with governance, it's literally.
It's where the confusion is, because in the kotahi plane, I'm here as Te Rohi o Te Wairoa, tātou Te Rohi o Te Wairoa, not that catchment, this catchment, it's about our settlement and our areas of interest.
That's
So
all
I
right.
think you need to get that really straight, because I'm gonna go back now to the table and say, oh, you know, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God.
So up in the north, so what happens is you've got those hills, the Wairoa
I
River
understand what a catchment is, I really understand what that is.
But what I was going to say is
I need
that.
explaining on that. I need explaining how that is in the kotahi plan. I'm here on the RPC representing Te Rohi o Te Wairoa. And it's just the area of interest of our settlement. How are we going north into another space? I've got everywhere else, Mohaka, you know, I can see them all there, but we're all one.
I guess,
We're all one, go ahead, eh?
yeah. But with this map.
No, but we're here for RPC based on our settlement and our areas of interest.
Yeah.
That's all one.
Yeah. Yep. And so this map doesn't determine that or not, because you would cover, some of our groups here would cover over several. So just as long as we've all got understanding that the settlement groups here will cover over different catchments.
So this is a catchment map?
Yeah.
It's just a catchment map?
Just a catchment. Yeah. But you've got what is the kotahi plan, which is based on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
the biophysical.
But I understand what you're saying, Michelle.
Yeah.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah.
Just going back to your other slide that had all the circles. Yeah. Just on the website, under the Kotahi plan, we had sites of significance to Māori.
Yep. So that comes in at the plan level. So that So RPS up here, plan level, the national policies, national planning standards
Yeah.
says that it comes in at the plan level.
So, but it would also potentially come in under resource management of.
So that's the issues.
Yeah.
Plan level is specific sites, so like Wahitapu site specifically. Yeah,
Got
so, yeah, issues?
So these bubbles are
At
mostly the
RPS
same.
level, yeah,
but there's a
most of
couple
the
that
same,
are
but there's a
different.
few tweaks like
Okay,
that one.
sorry, I didn't quite understand that.
Ka pai. Laura? Kia ora.
Just to clarify back to that catchment kōrero, yeah, we discussed all that pre-cyclone and it ended up Tamatea Pōkai Whenua were in about 6 catchments. So I had to be representative with about 4 councillors in the workshops.
Yeah.
And we argued that out then.
Yeah.
And which is why we're not actually zoned anymore because we argued it out. So it was with the aquifers rather than our settlement, and I get it, and yeah, but we know where our areas are, right? Yeah, so that's up to us to determine, not the council. The council's just determining the catchments, and we argued this out, which is part of my comment when we done the first motion, that these takiwa kōrero is gone off the table. And hear you, and I agree, we need to go on topic-based, right?
Ka pai.
And to be fair, it mustn't have been at the table when that was occurring, because I think it was before me.
Yeah, it was.
When I saw your slide, it said Kotahi plan.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at that and I don't understand it. I don't remember that, so I mustn't have been present at that
Yeah,
time.
it was,
So
was
it's about
pre-you,
also
Michelle.
getting us up to date
Up to speed.
when you have a new representative.
Yeah, which is why I asked
I
the
have a
staff.
point that I'm making.
Yeah, Michelle, so that's why I asked the staff to sort of go back on some of these topics. So moving forward for the questions. Yeah.
So.
These are not all the questions.
These are not all the
These are just some starters.
Questions to get you thinking about how you might give us some guidance on how we should do our workshops.
I think we've done a bit of this through the Mohaka plan change, where we've got Waihua and Mohaka in Aotearoa as well, and they're 2 different catchments.
And so there's nothing to say that you can't be involved in more, like, they don't draw that line for you at all. No.
Yeah.
So the first question is, which topics are the priority for workshop?
So do you want me to flick back to those
Yeah,
topics?
if you want to flip back.
Yep.
So pre-cyclone, what were they again? that
They
we
were land
workshop?
and freshwater, biodiversity and climate change.
Well, we've talked a lot through natural
hazards. Yeah.
natural hazards.
Yep.
I think so that's, I'm keen, and it's open for all of us to kōrero. I'm keen to see that as a priority as well.
I think we have priorities, but why wouldn't we have workshops on all of them?
Yep.
Because it's the order.
It's the order I think they're asking for.
Well, then the other thing I would say is if we come back to each of our councillors and PSG reps, in your areas, you're going to have some priorities that are different to other areas.
Yeah.
So my whakaaro was, and just want to put it out there as an idea, is that I think we should have workshops on everything. But the workshops you choose to go to might be the ones that are the greatest priority for you, because you might want to deep dive in those and go all out. And I would encourage particularly councillors who are, who have an area that, is shared with the PSGEs, for example, that, we should talk about the priorities in our area generally, so that it would be great if we were on the same page on those kaupapa, so that when we come back to the RPC as a bigger group, we've actually got some meeting of minds and not doing this, because I think that was happening in Tank a lot.
Yeah.
So I'd like to suggest that as one way of looking at it, asking each of the PSGEs, each of the councillors, when they think back to their areas that they're here for, mandated by, what are your constituents' big topics for them? Because as an example for Tank, we've spent, as far as I can tell, 12 years on Tank. As much as I love you fellas, I'd like to focus on the issues in our area. So I'd just like to make sure that we have the opportunity to do that, because if we prioritise you know, democratically, as a group, our top priorities, some of my top priorities
Yeah.
might not be in there, and I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, Chair, can I just pick up on that? We did that. So I recall we actually all put up our hands as to which of these topics we wanted to be on. And so you could have 10 workshops in 2 months and you go to 5 of them, 6 of them, 10 of them, whatever you like. But you'd get through them faster. And as our workshops, we don't have to all be at all of them, right?
No.
So I reckon it's a great idea. And I remember we did that. There were names beside them and we all sat around different tables of the ones we wanted to be in. So it's a great idea.
And it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. So,
Everybody
I
can
mean,
come to
everyone.
If you want to come to all 12, go for it.
Yeah, I know. As long as the comms are going out and people are well informed, I think that's a great idea.
And I
support
think
that too.
there's a good point in there, Tanya, about once we've had the workshop, us taking that information and sharing it back more broadly with the group. So even if you didn't want to attend the workshop, you can still read the notes.
Yeah.
of what's
As
coming
a
out
group,
of
we
it.
need to be across all of it at a level,
Absolutely.
but as representatives, some of us are going to want a deep dive.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
So just a short part time. Are they going to be hosted in Hastings, Napier and Wairoa to Wairoa? Because I don't recall anything happening in some
It's all
here.
here.
Just
These
here?
workshops are for us as governors.
just for us.
Governors,
Yeah.
yeah,
Governors.
before
Not
public
the other
engagements.
No,
No.
not those ones.
No, just us, yeah.
We can have them all in Tamatea if you like.
We can,
Well, actually, I don't mind.
I
I think
think
it's
we're-
Monday.
so through you, Chair, we're more than happy to travel around the region for the workshops also.
Yeah.
And happy to be guided on that.
Well, once you get a steer on what priorities are, you know, in which area, which PSG, I think that would be a common sense approach to
Probably not
host.
going to do coastal and Hiniuru.
Probably not.
Well, we'd have a question if they were interested in it.
Politely, they told us that wasn't a priority for them.
So it's a bit of a common sense approach,
Yeah,
and day, and what priorities are suitable for each of the groups, yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
So are these workshops just for us and our
So,
group,
so
not for the wider?
there will be ones for wider, but just for the point of today's paper, it's just for this group as governors.
But back to what we were doing over in Hastings, when we had those.
Yeah, we had the all governors.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I get sick of driving 5 hours.
And we can do a hybrid, people can attend online.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, Nick, did you have some
To
suggestions?
assist Chair, I think the general feeling I'm getting from the committee is people should be available to, should be open to coming to any workshop they wish. We'll do a bit of a survey and say, here are some dates for the workshops. Let us know if you're interested. There's no requirement that everybody's there for every one of them, but if you wish to be, that's perfectly fine.
I guess just
We might combine some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say,
There's a lot there, There's a lot
Because we
there in
might
a
want to
short time.
combine natural hazards,
And
climate
climate
change and urban form or
Yes.
infrastructure.
That makes sense.
yeah, I think that's wise that you could probably commonly group them into pairs or threes.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Can we have
Combine?
them all recorded so we can access them if we can't make them
Sorry?
Yeah, we can, yep, absolutely.
recorded?
Just for us as workshop participants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other question that I had, or 2 other questions, is policy staff are obviously available, but would there be any desire to have any of our scientists, consents, or the TAO staff there as well to help provide technical expertise?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Okay, sorry, consent staff might be a bit of a pusher under the pump, but
I'm too short staffed.
that's all right.
But I think it's also the understanding what is the baseline we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So as a workshop, would you distribute some information? So
That was my next question. What would be helpful for us to distribute to you? We can, I mean, there's technical information that can support it. Would it be helpful to show some draft thinking, to Martin's point earlier, in terms of what we have heard thus far, then plus kind of some general direction of travel or different options?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think identifying that issue really clearly so that we're, just defining the issues are really important. Because then we know what we're addressing and we might note that there are some issues that haven't been
Absolutely.
identified.
That'd be cool.
And the science behind it.
Could I ask for not too comprehensive,
Okay.
We just need bullet points.
Yep.
That lead us into the discussions. We can do our homework
Okay.
before. So no thesis, please, just.
Yep, that's good for us.
Yeah, no war and peace, just one-page summary.
Just so kind of like a briefing
Two-pager,
paper
yeah.
almost. Yeah, cool. Yep, absolutely.
Ka pai. So if there's no further discussion, the recommendation could be 1 and then 2.1, which is a series of workshops covering all topics. Is that enough to cover us for now and taking in all the feedback that we've provided for Nicola? Ka pai? I'm happy to move that and.
I'll second it. I was just going to say, Chair, that we might encourage staff to get in touch with us about which ones we want to go to.
Yes.
Yeah,
Working
absolutely.
out where they go.
Yeah, there'll be a survey come to us. Yeah, ka pai.
Can I just add to that? I'm conscious of the timeline.
Yeah.
Because I think once we've had the workshops, we might find that, well, obviously a workshop's not going to do it. Are you envisaging getting these workshops underway before the next RPC hui? Because the next RPC hui is in November.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? And then the next, and maybe we need to schedule,
So
I think we should expect that we're going to have more than 4 RPC hui next year. We're going to have a lot of RPC hui next year. So can we schedule them now?
Yep, we
You
can,
know,
I can work with Leanne on that.
Yeah,
Yep.
to do that.
For
so
the
that
next year
For the next
timetable.
year, so that we can see it all laid out.
Ka
Yeah.
pai. That
Yep,
sounds good.
absolutely.
Awesome, ka pai. Jenny?
Attached to the schedule, do you have a plan? Like, an RPC
Sort of me and.
year of priority, a plan?
Yeah, like a calendar.
No, not a schedule. Do we have a series of tasks that we kind of want to achieve next year? Or are we just?
So the RPS
I
is
think
the
this
most
will help
important.
build that.
Yeah, the RPS is the most important in getting us to 2028.
Is there a business plan for the RPC then? To 2028?
A business plan.
No, but that's a great idea, Jenny.
Just, I need to look ahead in order to make sure I'm there next week.
Could we have a first, excuse me, workshop
Yep.
on, for those of us who are not practitioners,
Yep.
around what does an RPS look like?
So like an RPS 101 kind
An
of.
RPS 101, so that we get to understand the kind of languaging and the way things are framed, because otherwise we'll all just go off in our many directions.
It's a great idea.
Cool.
Can we
I'll
make
make
that
you
our
all into
first one?
planners.
Yeah, excellent. Do it.
Workshop one.
Yeah, do it.
Ka pai.
Yeah, all good.
Awesome. Kia ora koutou. So that's on the table, and all those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against carried. Kia ora. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, team. Katrina and Wairama and Nick. Kia ora.
Well done, team.
That brings us to the conclusion of our hui today. Kia ora tātou. And we're 15 minutes early, so those who have to pick up their tamariki can do so.
And our fighting spirit to these team.
Tēnā tātou katoa. Me hoatu te rākau ki a koe tamihana kia whakatau i a tā tātou rā, and hoki pai atu ki tō kainga. Kia ora.
Ai, kia ora, tēnā kōrua ngā hiamana o tō tātou nei komiti e whakahaere hea nei i ngā kōrero kua puta ake nei. Tēnā anō hoki tātou e whakakahu tia hei māngai mō tō rōpū take kreme, tēnā koutou. Tēnā anō hoki tātou e whaikaha nei ki te whakapono atu ki te karakia, no reira me whakapono atu rā tātou, ma tō tātou nei karakia whakamutunga kia tau. Kia tau, kia tātou, katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a iwhaiti.
Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitana ki te wairua tapu. Ake, 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 amen.
Kia ora.
Mauri ora.
Mauri ora.
Mind if I say